good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you are tuning in. This is Unapologetically me, featuring me. No special guest, just me. How are you guys doing today? I hope you guys are all having a great day, a great week, a great weekend, whatever time it is that you are clicking on this video. If you are new here, welcome. Thank you so much for taking a chance on someone else's perspective on this case. Hopefully you will find something that you enjoy about either my presentation or you learn something from this video and you decide to stick around and subscribe. To my current subscribers, thank you so much for your support. You have no idea how much you all mean to me. I appreciate every single one of you. You make my time spent on these cases matter so much more than you will ever know. And finally, to my channel members. Oh my God. I remember when channel members became available for me and I was like, that's a feature I can just ignore. No way am I ever going to have members. But of course, I still hoped that someday I would. And now, here you are. I may be a tiny channel, but I am so blessed to have every one of you here. Viewers, subscribers, and now members, thank you. Truly, not just from me, but from my family as well. For everyone who is commenting, please know that your comments mean everything to me. Your likes mean everything to me. I can't necessarily thank all of you individually, but I do want you all to know that every single like, share, comment, and subscription mean the world to me. So thank you so much. Again, for those of you who are new here, hopefully you will find that I'm your cup of tea. And if not, that's okay too, because you have the ability to click out of here at any point. No hard feelings on my end. Please feel free to comment. Just remember to keep it classy. Everybody has their own opinion and they're entitled to it. So far, I think we've been doing a great job at keeping the comment section a safe space to share that opinion without people getting too insulting. You can say your opinion without insults, okay? That's just not going to fly here, all right? So just know that you're wasting your time. So now with all of that out of the way, let's get into today's video. All right, everybody, are we ready to get into part 3, episode 7? I know I am. This timeline has lasted 7 months. And, oh, that's crazy. Episode 7. This is month 7 of me working on this case. That's crazy. Okay, so it looks like every month we have a new episode. This timeline has taken such a long time to get through. I did not foresee it lasting 7 months and still going. But it is so important to get through the timeline because, like I said way in the beginning of doing these timeline videos, the timeline is extremely important. Knowing what everyone was doing at the same time puts a lot into perspective, especially when you're trying to see whether or not a person could have had help or others could have known what was going on before it happened or after it happened. So that's exactly why I thought doing this complete timeline of everyone involved was so important. And again, I need to give credit to Footsteps of Murder. A lot of you guys have gone over there and subscribed and watched her videos. This is where I'm getting most of these visuals. Of course, I'm adding my own commentary to it. I've also found some other things out that are not within her videos that I'm adding to it. But overall, the visual part of this, where the phrases are with actual people, she did all of that. So I do have to clip it and tie it together in the way that I'm explaining the timeline, but either way, it saved me a lot of time. So make sure if you're new, you didn't know that, to go there and show her some love. But yes, as I was saying, the timeline is extremely important. We're going to be going back to it. I can guarantee we're going to be going back to certain times when we're digging into other things more closely. I don't know how much longer it's going to be. I'm hoping no more than 1 or 2 more videos. I'm going to try to condense everything as much as possible. So, but let's just get into today's video because that's why you're here. We'll figure out all the other videos later on. When we left off in part 3, episode 6, it was 9:43 p.m. Nick and Amanda Thayer had just left the Watts home. They stopped at the gas station and the McDonald's on 52, the same one that Nicole Atkinson always seems to stop at on her way home, to see if anyone saw anything. And at 9:43 p.m., Chris replied, "Thanks, man." At 9:48 p.m., Chris called Nikki, and they're on the phone for 50 minutes. Her phone registered in Thornton, so she's at home. Now, this is the first time that Chris and Nikki are having a real chance to talk all day. So, what did they discuss? Well, according to Nikki, the entire day of Monday, August 13, 2018, the communication between herself and Chris was some texting throughout the day like normal, and then she talked to him over the phone later on in the evening, and this is what she told investigators. She said, "Chris called me and told me that the cops were at his house. I was unaware his wife missed a doctor's appointment or that his kids missed school that day, or that her friend had tried to contact her and that Chris had tried to call her and didn't get any response, or that her friend had stopped by hours earlier to check on Shanann. I asked Chris why the cops were there, and he said that Shanann's friend Nicole called them. Chris told Nikki while on the phone that the media were there. I was confused and I asked him why they were there. Chris said that Nicole had called the media. I asked Chris why he thought Nicole would call the cops and the media, and he said that Nicole wasn't being very nice to him, that Nicole was sitting in her car while talking to Shanann's mom. Nikki said she asked how Nicole knew Shanann's mom, and Chris said that they used to work together. Nikki asked if he thought that Nicole was the friend that was helping Shanann to get away for the day. Chris said, why would she call the cops if she was the one helping her? I suggested that maybe it was to throw them off the trail. Chris did not agree. Chris asked me if he should talk to the media. I told him no, and then suggested that if he did decide to talk to the media, he could ask Shanann to bring his kids back. I was uncomfortable with him asking me my advice on the media, so I asked him what his friends thought he should do. And Chris said that his friends believed that it would look bad if he didn't speak to the news, and thought that he should make a statement. I suggested the bank account idea again after he told me that Shanann was gone for the night at a friend's house. I asked him if any money was missing from the bank account, and Chris said no. At 9:51 p.m., Officer James of the Frederick Police Department called Jeremy Lindstrom. Jeremy was just leaving the Watts home when he received this call. Both David Colon and Jeremy Lindstrom left the Watts home. Jeremy said that he and David were there with Chris for about 15 to 20 minutes. Hold on a second. So were they there when Chris called Nikki at 9:48? Or were they just out the door when Chris called her and still outside the Watts house? Because they left at 9:51, and Jeremy remembers them calling just as he was leaving. Was he outside, like about to get into his vehicle, meaning that maybe he did leave the house at 9:48 and Chris right away calls Nikki? I mean, I really feel like that's probably likely what happened. It's the second that he shut that door, he called Nikki. He was probably dying to talk to her all day. 9:58 p.m., Officer James called Cindy Durosset. Cindy Durosset made a statement about the sheets being off the bed or the bed being stripped. It had been brought into question as to how Cindy would know this detail because she wasn't there.
I wish that there was something. I mean, it just none of this, like we've all been going back and forth. We know a lot of details that we're not letting other people know, but none of this is right, and none of this feels right. I'm telling you this, if it wasn't Chris, then who was it? You know, no, this doesn't make any sense. She doesn't have any way to go. If she just started to wander off, you know, like maybe she was so distraught, you know. I mean, we're trying to make sense of everything. Why was the bed stripped? You know, okay, where are the sheets at?
But Nicole Atkinson was there, and they were all talking together throughout the day. Now, Nicole Atkinson walked into every room of the Watts house, including the master bedroom, as you can see here. Nicole Atkinson was likely wondering the exact same thing when she saw the bed, and I'm sure she brought it up. And Cindy had a sick feeling about this detail as well. The flat sheet and pillowcases were eventually found in the kitchen trash the next day on Tuesday the 14th, and we all know where the fitted sheet ended up. It was the one that was found at Survey 319 on Wednesday the 15th. At 10 p.m., Chris said he laid down and took calls from friends and family for the rest of the night. Chris said he didn't go to bed until like 2 a.m. because he was, quote, fielding texts and calls all night, unquote. At 10 p.m., Chris clocked about 60 steps on his personal phone, so he's not quite laying down for the night, in my opinion. 11 p.m., he clocked 410 steps. Definitely not lying down. So did he lay down at 10 or 2? Nikki said that she didn't speak to Chris until her quote-unquote company left. My question to her would have been, what company? Danielle Haydahl or Jim Gutowski? Personally, I don't think she waited to be alone to talk to Chris at all, because personally, I believe that Jim knew about everything, but that's just my opinion. As for Danielle, when did she leave Nikki's apartment to go back home? Nikki said she was hosting a friend for the weekend. That friend was Danielle Haydahl. Jim showed up on Monday afternoon. When did they leave? According to Nikki, Jim left at about 10 p.m. on that Monday night, but we never know when Danielle Haydahl left.
Daniel came over Friday.
When did Jim come in?
Monday.
Huh.
In either way, Nikki's lying, because according to phone records, she talked with Chris for 50 minutes already, between 9:48 and 10:38. So if Jim didn't leave until 10, she was already on the phone with Chris before Jim left. And he left about 15 minutes after that phone call began. At 11:09 p.m., Nikki calls Chris, and they talk again for an additional 51 minutes. This call was deleted by Nikki on her phone. During this phone call, Chris is clocking steps, 401 steps to be exact. Is he pacing? During this phone call, Chris told Nikki that he believed Shanann would be back tomorrow. Oh, and her phone registers in Thornton. She's at home. So what else did she say about this conversation? Well, she said Chris told her that he was going to go to work the next day, and she told him, no, you need to stay home and help the cops. Oh, Nikki, always the voice of reason. It's such a blessing you met Chris so that you could guide him through all of this. I'm shaking my head right now. Chris said, what if Shanann comes back and sees my truck? Nikki said to park it down the street and to tell one of his friends to come and hang out with him. She also told Chris to turn on his phone video and to put his phone in his pocket. She said to record any conversation between he and Shanann, basically as evidence of what's said between the two. Now, I'm not going to lie here. Nikki saying some of this stuff is something that I would expect a girlfriend to say. And I think that may be why there are a lot of people who feel that Nicole Kessinger had no idea about any of this. That she was, in fact, quote, just as shocked as everybody else, unquote, when all of this happened. And, that's why I'm doing this deep dive. Let me just go off track for a second here. I could have picked any case to do a deep dive on. I've done many, 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 many cases. I've only deep dived a few of those cases, so I could have picked any one. I was suggested this case, and I was asked to look more into Nicole Kessinger. And at the time, I was completely unbiased. I only knew of Nicole Kessinger as being the mistress. That's it. I immediately thought of the Scott Peterson case and Amber Frey. And if you don't know about that case, well, first off, how do you not know about that case? Amber Frey was Scott Peterson's mistress at the time he allegedly killed his pregnant wife. He's still trying to fight that, so that's why I say allegedly, but Amber Frey really didn't have any idea about anything, and she went on to write a book. That's the book that Nikki was looking up after Chris Watts' confession. My point is, I didn't go into this case with any intentions of how it would turn out. Whether or not Nikki had no clue about Chris's plans or was the master planner herself, it doesn't affect me personally, right? My life doesn't change if Nikki's guilty of a crime, so I have no reason to push a narrative either way. I have covered so many cases over the last few years, and my goal has always been the same with true crime: to provide my viewers with accurate, fact-based information about all of the cases that I choose to research. Then I top it off with my opinion. That's it. This is a 6-year-old case. There are so many channels that have covered it, and they continue to cover it. Personally, I'm going to go through everything that I have discovered. I'm going to give my opinion at the end of the series, and then I'm going to move on to the next case that needs a fresh set of eyes and do it all over again. I am not a Watts channel. I am not any specific case channel. I am a true crime channel who's been doing this for 3 years now, and I've learned quite a bit over that last 3 years. I've improved quite a bit over these last 3 years, and I certainly am going to continue to try to improve and do every case I choose to cover justice. Okay, I just went on a tangent. Back to the topic. So, Nikki wanted Chris to record his conversations with Shanann for evidence. This was allegedly suggested by Nikki because Chris told her that he and Shanann got into an argument that morning. He said that she was being pretty mean to him and told him that she was pregnant, but that the baby wasn't his. Nikki asked Chris if he believed Shanann about that, and he told her, quote, "Yeah, she was kind of showing in North Carolina," unquote. Yet, Nikki did say that Chris thought that she had said that out of spite. Chris told Nikki that Shanann left her wedding ring, and he asked Nikki how much she thought it was worth. Nikki said, quote, "I don't know, pawn it, man. I pawn jewelry all the time, but you don't get much," unquote. Chris told her, quote, "I think I'm going to get it appraised. It's a nice rock," unquote. During this conversation, Chris also said that he was the one that wanted the separation and that Shanann didn't. Nikki said, "Wait, I thought she was the one pushing for the separation." Nikki also said she asked Chris if the cops were going to search her friend's house to see if she was there, since Shanann told him that she was going to a friend's house. Chris told her no. And Nikki asked why not, and Chris said he didn't know. Nikki asked Chris why Nicole Atkinson didn't like him, and he replied, "I don't know." Nikki asked him if Nicole was married and how well he knew her husband. Chris said he didn't really know her husband at all. Nikki suggested again that maybe Nicole was hiding Shanann from Chris for a while. Chris said maybe, but then why would she have called the cops? Nikki asked if Shanann could be with another man. Chris said it was possible, but he didn't think so. I asked him if he felt his family was in danger, and Chris said that if the kids are with Shanann, then they are safe. Chris never said he was worried or concerned about his family unless I prompted the question. Nikki said she also said, quote, "Looking back on everything, I am so glad that Nicole showed up that day to check on her friend," unquote. Nikki said that she had asked Chris why he had not come into the Anna Dargo office that Monday morning. Now, she made this appear to be a surprise for her, but she knew this information already. Later on, in a different interview, Nikki would say that they discussed this in the 111-minute phone call. Nikki also told law enforcement that it was not unusual for him to go straight out to the field in the morning. So, which is it? You knew? Or you were surprised? Was it normal or was it abnormal? Nikki even throws out how it was ironic that the same day Chris didn't come into the office that morning, his wife and kids went missing. Now, why would she say that when she knew the day or even days before? Because remember, Chris agreed to go out to the field on Monday morning that past Friday.
And I seen him on Friday.
Seen him on Friday. So that was the last time you saw him before the
Monday.
work week.
Yes.
Okay.
I seen him on Friday, and he told me he wanted me to look at his fire stick that he bought. Right after he gave me the fire stick, that's whenever Cody called. Cody Roberts, the operator of the Service 319, and said that he thought there was a leak in the bypass line.
And that's on 319, you said?
Yes, the Service 319.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Because that bypass line is now locked and tagged out because we done that Monday morning.
So it had already been the plan that Chris would be going straight to Survey 319 on Friday morning. And Nikki admitted later that Chris told her that on Sunday night, August 12th, over the phone, that in the morning he was going to be going straight to the field. I almost wonder if this was an alibi for Nikki. It makes it look as though she was at work. Nikki also said that during that phone call on August 12th, she could hear the TV on in the background and thought that it was late for Chris to be up. Okay, Mom. She said that it seemed like he might have been waiting up for Shanann to get home. Nikki then went into detail on how Chris told her that in the morning he was going to go straight to the field to check on a release. She then explained to law enforcement what that meant and then proceeded to say that she was confused by this, that Chris was not part of the environmental team, and they are the ones who typically respond to a release or a leak, which was what Chris was going there for. Now, Troy, Chad, and Cody all said otherwise, that they did handle these small leaks all the time, and it was their job to respond to the leaks and shut off the valves, lock and tag out the well, cover up the oil on the ground, and then report it, which, in the next sentence, Nikki says Chris was tasked with the lockout tagouts all the time. Again, which is it, Nicole Kessinger? Was it his job Or was it not his job to perform lockout tagouts on an oil release? Facts. It was Chris's job to do those things. And I find it funny that Nikki found this so strange all of a sudden after she was told that her phone was going to be taken into evidence for further analysis. Remember in the first interview at Majestic Park, where Detective Philip Jones told her that they can recover deleted text, and Nikki says, I almost don't even want to say it like her because I don't want to blow your guys' eardrums out, but she says, oh, very high-pitched. I just said it and I blew my own eardrums out, so I'm going to save you guys from Nikki's shocked voice. So now, in the next interview with Detective Kobach, Nikki's saying that she's so thrown off by Chris being in the field in the morning that she wanted him to prove that he was really there, that he was really at Survey 319, and she wanted him to send her proof. So he sent her a photo. She said that that was to prove that he was really at work and not somewhere else. Chris sent her this photo of the release, as well as text exchanges between himself and other workers that morning in order to prove that he was there. Nikki said that Chris told her that the camera saw him leaving his home at 5:15 as usual. He also told her that at 9:30 a.m., the garage door alerted that it was opened and never got a notification that it closed again. Now, as she's explaining all of this to Detective Kobach, she's making sure to say that she isn't sure what all was said over the phone versus over text. It is my opinion that some of this was over text, and she's trying to make sure she has explained it away. They are things that really aren't crucial to the case unless law enforcement was looking for an accomplice, right? That someone else was in that home at 9:30 a.m. because Chris is at work, so who could have been opening the garage door and then not closing it all the way? Especially because we know that Shanann was buried in the ground at Survey 319 by 9:30 a.m. Yet, that 9:30 a.m. alert did happen. Chris knew Shanann was dead at 9:30 a.m., right? I mean, he had just buried her. So why would he mention that to Nikki unless he really didn't know how it could have happened? And if he mentioned it by text, then Nikki would need to explain why, because Chris had no idea. He for sure was at Survey 319 at 9:30 a.m., but we don't know where Nikki was. Nikki said she asked him if the garage door was open when he got home, and he said no. She said she asked him whether or not Shanann would have left out of the garage, and Chris told her either the garage or the back door because she is not on the front camera at all. She said Chris asked that they not talk about it anymore and asked her to talk about something else. She also mentioned that Chris was lying on his bed, but it didn't appear that he was in his bed in the basement, hinting towards knowing he was lying in the shared bed in the master bedroom upstairs. Nikki ends this phone call at 12:01 a.m. It is now Tuesday, August 14th. Immediately after Nikki and Chris hang up, Chris texts Addie, quote, all the meds are still here, unquote. And that is in response to a text that Addie had sent a couple hours prior. Addie immediately responds, quote, oh, Chris, this is so scary. Cece needs that medication, doesn't she? Every day, unquote. Chris responded, quote, she takes it every day, once a day. We have containers full of it downstairs, unquote. And I think this is kind of to implicate that just because Shanann did not take the medication out of her purse does not mean that Cece didn't have her medication, because they have containers full of it downstairs, which is another thing, and I don't want to spin off for more than 2 seconds here, but why so much medication in those freaking bins downstairs? It's just weird. Also, immediately after hanging up with Chris at 12:02 a.m., Nikki searched Google for Shanann Watts. At 12:08 a.m., Chris called Nikki and they spoke for another 31 minutes. Her phone still registers in Thornton. Nikki did mention that she texted Chris that she was scared. Like as not, after searching Shanann, she freaked out and texted that to Chris, and so he called her. This is speculation, of course, but she did mention about the text messages. Oh, I believe you'll see it in my text messages. I said I was scared, and she said the reason that she was scared. So it's just speculation, but that call ended at 12:39 a.m. Then again at 1:12 a.m., Nikki calls Chris for 3 minutes. Her phone still registering in Thornton. Nikki explained to officers that she called Chris in the middle of the night and that he sounded like he was asleep. She said she asked him how he could be sleeping. He told her that he was dozing off here and there. At 1:51 a.m., Chris called Nikki for 8 minutes. Her phone registered again in Thornton. While they were on the phone, Chris got a call from Officer Goodman of the Frederick Police Department, and this was at 1:58 a.m. Chris would end up playing phone tag with the officer, eventually calling him from his work phone after a few failed attempts from his personal phone.
This is Officer Goodman. Is this Christopher? Yep. Hung up on me again. Hello, Christopher? Christopher. Yeah. It's Officer Good. Yeah.
Well, isn't that interesting? I mean, it's working fine for everyone else. The officer is using a landline, so what could be the problem? Unless, is it possible that Nikki wanted to know what the police were saying and that Chris was trying to place the call back to the officer using three-way calling, and for whatever reason, it wasn't going through? That would explain why he kept hanging up on the officer when he called and Chris called right back. For a three-way call, Chris would have been the one initiating the outgoing call. During this game of phone tag, Officer Goodman gets up to get what looks to me to be a procedural book. You know, like a book that gives codes to possible scenarios. You know, like how they talk on their scanners, like a 1021 or whatever. It looked like a code book like that. Like he was trying to figure out how he could code this if he ended up not getting in contact with Chris. To, have someone go there to see what the hell was going on. Just my opinion. 2:05 a.m., Officer Goodman said he received a call from Chris from a different number. He said Chris told him that something was wrong with his personal phone and that it kept saying call failed, so he was now calling from his work phone.
Hello, Christopher. This is Officer Goodman, Frederick Police Department. Are you there? Hello? That's the number you called and it went right through last time you had contact with him? 910-309-1702. That's what's coming in. They don't have a house phone? That's a different number now. This is Officer Goodman, Frederick Police Department.
Hey, this is Chris Watts. I was trying to call you back from my personal phone. Kept saying call failed, but I just used my work phone.
Oh, this is your work phone? Okay.
At 2:06 a.m., Chris called Nikki. That call was unanswered. And he is doing this on his personal phone while he is on his work phone with Officer Goodman. At 2:07 a.m., Nikki calls Chris for 11 minutes, leading many to speculate, myself included, that she was listening to Chris on speakerphone with Officer Goodman on Chris's work phone. I mean, what else could it be? Chris's personal phone was on a call with Nikki at the same time he was on his work phone with Officer Goodman of the Frederick Police Department. 4:29 a.m., Shanann's iPad logs onto the home router. Just speculation, but I think Chris was checking her Facebook and also likely her text messages. I believe Chris is trying to gauge Shanann's friends' thoughts and ideas, what they may be saying to each other that they're not saying to Chris. Like, basically, do they suspect him? 4:38 a.m., Officer Goodman said that he was contacted by Sandra, Shanann's mother, and that both Sandy and her husband, Shanann's father, Frank, were feeling strongly that Shanann and the girl's disappearance involved foul play. She tells Officer Goodman that she strongly believes that her son-in-law was involved in the disappearance of her daughter and granddaughters. She stated that Chris was acting weird and out of the ordinary. She said he was telling people that he had to go to work, and that doesn't make sense. In fact, Sandy actually said that she feared that Chris wanted to go back out to the field to pour oil on the bodies and burn them. She brought up Shanann's lupus and said that if they got physical, Shanann wouldn't have been able to put up much of a fight. She mentioned Shanann's Apple Watch and gave a description of it to Officer Goodman. Right after that call with Officer Goodman, at 4:58 a.m., Sandy calls Chris for 4 minutes. Then, right after hanging up with Chris, she called the Frederick Police Department again. She told Officer Goodman that she and her husband Frank had just called to talk to Chris and that he has not yet shed a single tear for his missing family. She also told Officer Goodman that she told Chris if he did something to his family, he would see her become irate. Sandy finally told Officer Goodman that Chris called a neighbor and said that he felt that they were watching him about his involvement in this. And he would be accurate, because they were about to have a cop on him consistently until he was arrested. At 5 a.m., Chris's work phone logged on to the home router. 6:14 a.m., Addie texted Chris, quote, "Chris, I think people need to be out searching. Have the police mentioned search parties," unquote. Chris responded, quote, "No search parties. They told me not to go out driving because I wouldn't know what to look for," unquote. Addie said back, quote, "We need to start looking. Are you still thinking that she's with this mystery friend? And do the police have the neighbor's security footage?" Unquote. Chris replied, quote, "There's still a chance in my mind she's with someone I don't know of. I really hope that's the case. The police have seen all the footage from the cameras." Unquote. At 6:31 a.m., Luke Eppel sent out a GroupMe message that Chris would not be at work that day. 6:32 a.m., Sandy called Chris for 6 minutes. 6:50 a.m., Barb Kivett, Nikki's mom, called Nikki for 1 minute. Nikki's phone registers in Platteville. She is in the area of work. At 7 a.m., Detective Baumhover arrived at work to hear that Shanann Watts and her 2 daughters never came home. He requested an immediate press release be issued and initiated assistance from the CBI and ultimately the FBI. Nikki said that Tuesday morning, Chris texted her that his friend David Colon was coming over to sit outside his house and that his friend Nick was coming over in the afternoon. At 7:26 a.m., Chris texted Samantha Paisley a weird-ass text. First, it was more BS, telling Sam that he's hoping Shanann's with someone he doesn't know about. He tells her he has exhausted all of the people that he does know of, but what is weird to me is the verbiage he uses next. He says, quote, "I'm optimistic we will reunite again," unquote. Now, I don't know about you, but in my opinion, that sounds like something you would say after a loved one has passed away. At least that's my opinion. We will reunite again? That's weird. That would have definitely told me all I needed to know. But he went on to let Sam know, just as he had let Addie know the day before, that people had been coming by to check on him from time to time. 7:30 a.m., Melissa Parrish and Chad McNeil return to Survey 319 to check the equipment. 7:35 a.m., Chris's personal phone logs onto the home router. 7:59 a.m., Josh Rosenberg texted Chris and asked how he was doing. Chris replied, quote, "No word at all, man. I know the cops are getting the missing persons report ready. I'm at home, sick to my stomach," unquote. Josh said, quote, "No luck at hospitals or hotels," and then he offered any help if Chris needed it. Chris replied with a lie and said that he had checked everyone he could think of, which we knew he didn't. 8 a.m., Anthony Brown, a coworker at Anadarko, said the first he heard about Chris's family being missing was on Tuesday, August 14th. He said he saw on a group email that Chris wouldn't be at work that day. He said he initially thought nothing of it. He said he and Troy McCoy were out at a work location when Troy said something about Chris's family. He said this was at about 8 a.m. Troy told Anthony that Chris was getting ready to do an interview with the media about his family being missing. Anthony said that he immediately reactivated his Facebook account and he began posting everything he could about the Watts family and asking for anyone with info to come forward. Anthony had previously deactivated his Facebook account because he found it to be a waste of time. He said that he and Troy talked about what was going on, and Troy filled him in on what had gone on so far. He told Anthony that Chris and Shanann had been having marital issues for a while now, and that more recently, Chris had been sleeping on the couch. Anthony Brown said that he was completely unaware of any issues between Chris and Shanann in their marriage. Anthony said that Troy told him Shanann even took off her wedding ring and left it on the counter before she disappeared. Anthony said that he and Troy speculated that Shanann had left Chris and took the girls with her. They also speculated that Shanann had met someone on one of her business trips for Thrive. Anthony said Troy told him that Shanann hadn't taken anything with her when she left, no clothes or medicine for the girls. 8:19 a.m., Kelly Burke texted Chris, quote, "Hi, what's being done today?" unquote. I just love the heat that these friends are putting on him. Like, he is getting no rest, no sleep, no time without one of her friends being like, "What's going on? What are we doing today? How can we help? We're not going to leave you alone." Chris responds, quote, "The missing persons report should be filed now," unquote. Kelly replied, quote, "What did the police do next?" unquote. Chris replied, "Just put the reports out there and hope we get a hit." Quote, "Praying so hard," unquote. Praying so hard. Yeah, I bet he is. Praying so hard that they don't find them. Kelly replied, quote, "Me too, Chris," unquote. 8:27 a.m., Addie texted Chris for any new information. She asked about an Amber Alert for the girls, and Chris said that they didn't see anyone at all on the cameras, and that because the police believe the kids to be with Shanann, he thinks it will just be a missing persons report for all. Now, these are questions you would think that he would have exact answers for, because you would think that he had the same questions and had already asked them, right? This is where I can see how, while it was nearly impossible for friends and family to wrap their heads around Chris having anything to do with this disappearance before, his behavior and almost nonchalance began to make it much easier for these friends and family to doubt he was telling the truth. I mean, he's acting like it's just a regular day. His family hasn't come home. So while at first they were like, "Oh my gosh, Chris could never have done anything like this," now, watching his actions and lack of emotion, they're over here like, "Wait a minute. Actually, he looks pretty guilty." Addie says, "Where would the girls be if not with her?" 8:29 p.m., Chris's phone logs onto the home router again, and Chris responds to Addie, quote, "I'm not sure. I'm hoping they are all together safe," unquote. I mean, this is irritating for me to even read. I cannot imagine how just frantic, angry, frustrated, these people would be, especially because most of them are in other states. Now, Cody Roberts said he learned about Chris's family being missing from a Facebook post, and I wonder if it was Anthony Brown's Facebook post. But Cody said he texted Troy to confirm what he had learned. He said he texted Chris that he had heard about his family. He said, quote, "I pray they're found safe and get back to you. If you need anything, call me, text me," unquote. Chris did not respond. 8:44 a.m., Nikki called Chris Getman. Now, in the last video, I had to look into who he was again, and I found that he works, and he still works to this very day, for Halliburton. And Halliburton is where Nikki was contracted to before she worked at Anadarko. Now, this is the second time that they speak. Both times are after the murders, and both calls are brief. She called him for 4 minutes on the afternoon of the 13th while she is at home, and then he called her for 2 minutes on the 14th while she is at work. So this is interesting. There's no call, no phone number of this before August 13th. So it's just weird. Why is she calling someone from her old work? 9:15 a.m., Officer Dahl was tasked to 2905 Saratoga Trail to retrieve neighbor Nate's camera footage. Detective Baumhover gave 3 specific times to check on that footage: 1:45 a.m., 5:30 a.m., and 12:27 p.m. on August 13th. 9:29 a.m., Chris transferred one last image of Nikki into his secret calculator app. It was a semi-nude selfie of Nikki, and I am wondering when that came in. Because if she legit sent him that photo at 9:30 that morning, that's something. Anyway, 9:45 a.m., CSO Simmons was asked to drive over in an unmarked car to observe the Watts home and Chris Watts himself, and to report on everything he observed. Addie texted Chris again, just checking in. She asked about the hospitals again and asked if Chris was alone at the house. Chris replied, quote, "All of the hospitals," unquote. You liar! Chris told her that his friends Nick and Amanda were en route to his house. Addie replied, quote, "Are you doing okay?" unquote. Chris said, quote, "The best I can be, trying to remember to eat," unquote. I mean, seriously, he can't even pretend to be concerned more about his family than himself. I mean, a normal person is asked if they're okay when their whole family's missing, and you're not okay. No, I'm not okay. Not okay at all. You wouldn't be saying, "Oh, no, the best I can be. I'm just trying to remember to eat." You'd be like, "No, I'm not okay. Until they are here in front of my face, I am not and I will not be okay." I mean, some of it I think is that he was always so awkward that you couldn't get a gauge on him as it was, and people can react many different ways during and after traumatic events. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that he was in shock and emotionally shut down. That can happen. But we have already seen evidence that Chris doesn't feel real emotion the way most people do. I mean, do you remember way back, I don't know what video this was in that I did, but he even had to look up, quote, "How does it feel when someone says I love you?" unquote. I mean, he's literally Googling how to feel an emotion that you can't really explain. I don't know. Okay. At 10 a.m., CSO Simmons began observation of the Watts home for any suspicious activity, making notes on license plates of vehicles that were passing by in case they were ever of any relevance. He also made notes on all activity going on at the Watts house. He sent Detective Baumhover a photo of a white van leaving the residence at 10 a.m. as he arrived. This was a news media van leaving the Watts house after Chris declined interview. 10:21 a.m., a male and female go into the residence. This male and female were Nick and Amanda Thayer. Nick and Amanda said that when they arrived, Chris looked tired and not himself. He looked overwhelmed. They said they sat around the kitchen table talking about the possibility of them talking to the media, because the media had been hounding not only Chris, but friends of Chris and Shanann as well. Nick and Amanda Thayer had been contacted by the media for an interview as they were on the way to his home. They also talked about Chris talking to the media. 10:45 a.m., CSO Simmons reported that Chris moved his truck to the east out of sight. Remember Nikki saying something is at the beginning of this video about Chris moving the truck out of sight in case Shanann came home, but why would he actually move it, knowing that that scenario of Shanann coming home was never going to happen? Like some of these small details really bug me because they could be clues, but they also could be nothing at all. Anyway, he parks his truck in front of 6201 Saratoga Trail. 10:47 a.m., Troy texted Chris saying, quote, "Hey, sorry to bother you, but just wanted to make sure you were hanging in there, man. I hope you will have answers soon. Just wanted to let you know that we're thinking of you and praying for you and your family. Like I have said before, if there is anything I can do, just let me know," unquote. 10:11 a.m., Shanann's friend Kendall posted to Facebook a news broadcast about the Watts and tagged Nicole Atkinson and a couple of others. This broadcast aired at 11:09 a.m. on August 14th. This is where it is shown more publicly that Shanann was pregnant.
At 4 years old, Shannon is also 15 weeks pregnant. They're asking for help finding them. If you have any idea where they might be, call the Frederick Police.
11:15 a.m., Luke Eppel sent a message in GroupMe for the Anadarko employees to meet him for some training and to bring their Mod 1 books. Troy McCoy, Melissa Parrish, and Anthony Brown were there at that training.
Everyone meet me at the Aquaterra State, 1836 at 11:15 p.m. for some training. Bring your Mod 1 books if you have them.
11:25 a.m., Chris's phone logs into the home router. 11:26 a.m., Nicole Atkinson leaves her home to drive to the Watts home, where she arrives at 11:38 a.m. CSO Simmons noted a 4-door white car and a brunette woman with a little girl giving a news interview outside the Watts home. This was Nicole Atkinson with her daughter. Nicole Atkinson arrives at 11:38 a.m. and she stays there for 47 minutes. Nicole parks at 6323 Steeple Rock Drive. I honestly think she was afraid of Chris at this point. Obviously, the media wanted all of these interviews to be in front of the Watts house, but Nicole Atkinson was not trying to get too close if she didn't have to. That, of course, is just my opinion. She doesn't leave the area until 12:26 p.m. And this is her media plea to the public.
I'm just concerned and understand if you're hearing this or you're out there, please let somebody know you're okay.
Shanann Watts and her 2 girls, 3 and 4 years old, are all missing.
It's not something you think's gonna happen in your backyard or your closest friend. I called her and texted her several times, and then when she didn't answer because I knew she had a doctor's appointment that morning, she didn't show up for it. I'm just worried sick. I don't know where she's at. This is completely unlike her.
Officer Dahl was at Nate's house around the same time to retrieve the security camera video, and this is how that went.
Hey, what's going on, man? Oh, not much. Hey, I was talking to the detective, and he said he just wanted everything between that time frame. Okay. On the video.
Is there any way we could do this in like 15 minutes?
Yeah. Well, I just needed to tell you that he just wants that clip when you guys get it. And what's your first name again? Nathan. What's your last name?
TRINASTICH. As soon as these pictures are gone, we'll take care of it. We just got a phone call from my mother-in-law. Someone stole their truck last night from Westminster.
Oh, geez.
And they found it in Boulder, so she has to go down and get it.
Oh, gotcha.
She needs a ride.
Yeah, no problem.
My wife's going to have to leave and go deal with that. So.
Yeah. Well, that's no problem. No, I just wanted to tell you just from that the time that they got dropped off until the officer
2 o'clock to
from when the officer came over and talked to you last night.
Well, I'll call my wife's gonna have to call Comcast because it's in her name and they won't talk to me, obviously.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we got the whole chunk.
As soon as she takes her mom goes and gets her mom, she'll come back and we'll make the phone call and we'll get it all for you.
Perfect. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, have a good one.
Officer Kate Lyons arrives at the Watts house after meeting with Sardis, Search and Rescue Dogs of the U.S., the search and rescue team they used for the first canine search of the Watts home. Coming in with her will be Jane, the dog handler, and her canine, Cody, a chocolate lab, who in my opinion alerts far more often than is noted. But then again, I don't know. It's supposed to be like 3 barks, and then a space, and then 3 more barks, and I feel like he did that so often. But again, I don't know anything about that other than what I've read briefly. Not something I've actually researched. 11:46 a.m., Chris finally replies to Troy's text saying, quote, "This has turned into a nightmare," unquote. Troy replied, quote, "I am truly sorry, man," unquote. I don't know, it seems a little cryptic to me. I don't know what to think of some of these text messages between him and Troy. Are they innocent? Are they staged? Are they evidence of deception? I don't know. At 12:08 p.m., Nikki spent nearly 4 hours searching Google and the internet for Chris Watts, news outlets, and news accounts of Shanann's disappearance. These, of course, were all deleted by Nikki when she was through. Nikki told law enforcement that she left work after she learned that Shanann was 15 weeks pregnant on her lunch break. She said she was feeling sick and that her friend Jim, who had been over, was also sick. This was said to be a stomach illness where she couldn't keep anything down but water.
I'm so hungry.
You should have told me. I would have got you some food. I got food in my car.
It's not staying down. It's just coming.
She hadn't been feeling good. Not because of any, just
Like, I got sick prior to this
Jim.
whole thing happening, and then I think all of this compounding with the
Stress.
fact that I'm sick, it's just not good. I've not really been eating or sleeping much at all.
Interesting. Very interesting. I mean, she could have had a stomach bug. I don't know why Jim went over to her apartment while throwing up and then left at 10 p.m. on August 13th. I mean, if he got sick while he was there, why wouldn't he just sleep over? He was in town, he wasn't working at the time. And if he was sick before getting there, why would he go? I mean, when I'm puking my brains out, I'm not about to get in a car and go to a friend's house. It's weird. Also, I'm not about to get up and go home either if I'm already at a friend's house. Like, I don't know. We don't even know that he did leave. Like, we have no proof that he even did leave, right? So I don't even know why I'm even saying that. Anyway, the thing about this is, for me, Nikki would have been understandably sick to her stomach after finding out what she allegedly just found out, right? It's the unnecessary lying for me. The most likely reason for her to be sick was because of the situation. Anyone would be if they found out what she has maintained that she found out, right? Like, if she really knew nothing and was just as shocked as everyone else, you know? She's just dating this guy. She knows nothing at all. She doesn't even know the wife is pregnant. And then bam, they're missing. She's pregnant. All of these things are being found out all in like a matter of like probably 5 minutes on the news. She's not even hearing it from Chris. She's hearing it from the news. I mean, I'd be sick to my stomach too. I'd be probably violently throwing up too. But yet she blames it on being sick, and then she even throws Jim into the situation. Well, Jim was sick, so I caught it from him. Anyway, she also said that she told Jim that he could come over earlier than he did the day before. So Jim was coming back over that day. So Nikki had been searching the internet for 4 hours while at work. And then she actually left at noon on the 14th. So she appeared to have left at lunchtime. I don't know. I'm confused. Nikki does some confusing things, and we will be looking more into them in a separate video. 12:17 p.m., CSO Simmons was relieved of her duty of surveilling the Watts house by CSO Scarlett. 12:26 p.m., Nicole Atkinson left the area of the Watts home, and she drove to the area of 5968 Firestone Boulevard. 12:28 p.m., CSO Scarlett reported this as a white car that was parked on Steeple Rock with an unknown license plate left the area heading north. 12:30 p.m., CSO Scarlett reported a black truck turned right from Steeple Rock onto Saratoga Trail. 12:31 p.m., Chris began to tell others that he would be giving an interview with the media. He had been mulling over whether or not to do this, but he had finally decided to do it. 12:33 p.m., Scarlett said that same black truck came back around, stopped to pet the dog being Cody, because they had also just got there. Like, all this is going on at the same time. That's kind of why I'm doing this. Like I said, like, all of these things are going on in tandem. There's an officer at Nate's house getting camera footage. Officer Kate Lyons is there with Jane and Cody, the dog. The media's coming. Amanda and Nick had just dipped out. So there's a lot going on at the same time. Nikki's searching things. So this black truck came back around the second time, stopped to pet the dog. The passengers were a white male and white female. Male was the driver, female was the passenger. They stopped at a stop sign and made a left onto Saratoga Trail. These two were a news crew there to set up for Chris Watts' interview. The first canine search was going on inside the home at this time. 12:39 p.m., Nick and Amanda, who had left for food earlier, were arriving back. CSO Scarlett makes note of this, but she said she hadn't observed them get out of the car. Yet, here they are, getting out of the car and walking up to Chris, who is talking to one of the media guys in front of his house. 12:48 p.m., CSO Scarlett notes that Jane and her dog exit the Watts house. Officer Lyons reports that Jane will be coming out with her dog and then to send the second search dog and handler in.
It's hard to tell where that scent's actually coming from.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'll get him out.
Hey, can you send one of the canines down to the basement, please?
Let me get him out of here.
Yep, she's going to take her dog out, and we need to have one of them come in, and I'm going to stay in the basement and wait for them. So she's coming out right now.
Jillian Gamley, an agent for the CBI Denver, said that Detective Baumhover told her that Jane's dog had hit on an area near the basement stairs a few minutes before she had called. So an additional dog was called in to confirm that hit. Jillian Gamley said after learning all of the facts, quote, "I told him that an endangered missing alert may be appropriate," unquote. At this point, Detective Baumhover informed her that Frederick Police Department was running out of resources and asked if they could possibly step in to help with some of these search efforts. She told him, of course, she would be sending agents out to assist, and she would also get back to him about moving that search up to endangered missing. At this point, it was just missing persons. CBI agent Gamley spoke with her supervisor, and she agreed with everything, and they began to assign agents to head over to Frederick to assist. The plan was to wait on confirmation of the hit from Canine 1 by Canine 2. If the hit was not confirmed, then they would upgrade the missing persons to endangered missing. If the hit was confirmed, that would indicate that one or more members of the family were no longer alive, and therefore they would not be upgrading the report because they would no longer be actively endangered. And in my opinion, this means that the search would have become for a body or bodies, not a living endangered family. The rush would not be as necessary anymore if there was confirmation of death. CBI agent Gamley prepares the endangered bulletin just in case. 12:50 p.m., CSO Scarlett notes that Canine 2 has now entered the Watts house. 12:51 p.m., the news crew departed. 12:53 p.m., Nicole Atkinson arrives to that area off of Firestone Boulevard. Over there's another McDonald's, there's a tire center, there's a Walgreens in that area, and she is there for 31 minutes until 1:54 p.m. 12:53 p.m., Nikki calls her mom for 2 minutes. She is in Henderson on her way home. 12:53 p.m., same news crew returns. 12:53 p.m., CSO Scarlett reports that Officer Lyons and Canine 2 have left the Watts house. At 1:24 p.m., Nicole Atkinson left the area near 5968 Firestone Boulevard and then returned back just 7 minutes later at 1:31 p.m. And when she arrives back, she stays at that location of 5968 Firestone Boulevard for 1 hour. Okay, so this is interesting to me. Nicole Atkinson is at a location for 30 minutes. She then leaves for 7 minutes and comes directly back and stays for an hour. Here's what I was thinking. Maybe she left to go to an ATM for cash. But then I was like, Walgreens has ATMs. But then I was like, there are fees if it's not your bank. So I do still think it's a possibility that she left to go to a bank. Was she waiting on a prescription at Walgreens? Was something wrong with one of her tires? If so, that might explain this activity. Of course, then we have to ask what was wrong with her tire, and people will speculate that it's evidence of Nicole Atkinson's involvement because of driving on the rough terrain at Survey. And before you know it, we have another reason for people to trash talk Nicole Atkinson and a fresh new juicy conspiracy theory in the making, directed right back to me and my channel, and I don't want that. Now, don't get me wrong, I love me a good conspiracy theory, but when they are based on rumor and false information, that is where I have to draw the line because it ruins people's lives. These are real people. I think sometimes a lot of people forget. This isn't a movie. Just because they made a Netflix documentary doesn't make it fiction. So here's just a little theory, all right? It's just a theory, okay? Nicole Atkinson is driving home to notice something is wrong with her tire. She stops at this tire place, which is on her way home anyway, and waits while they take a look. They tell her how much it will cost. She goes to the bank and gets the cash and then goes right back to have the tire fixed while she waits for it. Now, I have no idea if this happened or not. None whatsoever. It's just a stupid little theory that I made up in my mind that would explain these movements on Nicole Atkinson's Life 360. Also, I can spend an hour inside Walgreens easy. Then again, I don't get out much, so maybe that's just me. But she could have been waiting on a prescription. Like I said earlier, she could have also gone to McDonald's, which seems to be one of her favorite places to eat. Just kidding. Just speculation for entertainment only. This is the area she was in, though. And we will have to see if this is ever explained. Because as of right now, I don't know what she was doing here. But if you look at this route on her Life 360, and then you look at the location of Google Earth, like I did here, it looks like she went to this bank right next to O'Reilly Auto Parts, in between the 30 minutes and the hour that she was at the 5968 location. So did she stop at McDonald's and then go to the bank and then go back to Walgreens? Was she at the Walgreens and then went to the bank and then went to McDonald's? Was it the tire replacement scenario? Who knows? Maybe we can make some sense of this after learning more in the next video. That being said, this is where we will be ending today's video, which again is episode 7 of part 3, the complete timeline. We are getting very close, like I said at the beginning, to the end of this timeline. In the next episode, we will be picking up where we are leaving off. Nicole Kessinger arrives home to her sick friend Jim and begins to perform a slew of searches that she is quick to delete. You definitely don't want to miss that. So if you're not subscribed, please make sure to subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like it, leave a comment below, and I will talk to you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for being here, clicking on this video, sticking around to the end. I love you guys so much. Please have a great rest of your week or weekend. Please be safe, be happy, be healthy, and most of all, be unapologetically you. Bye-bye.